What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mind of Marsal podcast. This is episode number 112. I am your host, Armando Marsal. You could find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando underscore Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. Before jumping into it, I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you all. Remember, if you joined the podcast, if you're enjoying the show, if you're enjoying the content, please make sure you follow, like, rate, thumbs up emoji, review, wherever it is you're listening to the podcast. It does go a long way for the pod. And remember, any questions, topics, anything you want me to discuss on this podcast, email that to mindofmarsal@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the Mind of Marsal YouTube channel. You'll catch these podcasts plus shorts and all that other great stuff there on the YouTube channel. I will be riding solo once again, and we are in peak draft, mode right now. Like we have less than a week away for the start of the NFL season, so a lot of fantasy managers drafting. So I thought it would be a good, a day to record the podcast. I actually have my home league draft this evening. That's a 10-team super flex league, a keeper league there. I'm starting off the draft. I think pretty good, right? In good shape. I have Garrett Wilson and CJ Stroud as my keepers there, both going in rounds. It's 12 and 14 for each of them. So I got a 12th rounder and a 14th rounder. I'm giving up. Not obviously that great value there. Going into the draft with, CJ Stroud is probably going to be my QB2 in this league. That's kind of my mentality here. I got the number two pick, truly hoping Jamar Chase does land to me at that number two pick. That'd be great. I haven't been fortunate enough to get a lot of, top two picks in drafts, especially in best ball. I think the first day I got a first pick was a couple of days ago, and I'm about 30 drafts in drafters. So halfway there, trying to get to that 60 to 75 mark as far as rosters are concerned in best ball. But yeah, I am looking forward to tonight's draft. It's going to be fun. It's usually a good time. We got some pizza on deck and things like that. So I'm always looking forward to it. Definitely will share the results of that draft sometime next week in one of my next episodes there. Today is going to be simple. We're going to talk some roster management because I've got a lot of questions on Discord, following the draft and who to drop, who to add. Are we trading? And we're going to talk all of that stuff here today. I'm going to talk about some movers in my rankings here. I made some updates there in the auction draft book over at fantasyguru.com. So make sure you're checking those out there. I just posted those this morning. So made some changes. There's been a lot of news, a lot of injury news. Obviously people are suspended, people placed on the IR and things like that. There's, players still dealing with injuries and we're a week away. So I'm going to talk about all of that here today. I'm going to talk about some of the handcuff priorities. There's been a lot of discussion in Discord of if you miss on your handcuff, are you going out to trade? I'm going to discuss that here. And then also just some thoughts as we head into the season. I want to, remind everyone of some things that, like a little checklist of things to keep in mind between now and the start of the season, as we get prepared for week one. So next week there'll be multiple podcasts. I do plan on doing multiple podcasts. I'm going to be doing a weekly DFS podcast in addition to, a regular show here. So keep an eye out for all of that content coming out here next week. Today is August 29th, Friday. I am recording today. If the podcast will be up this afternoon. So make sure that you're checking everything out there. And of course, all of my work, all of my content, that all can be found there at fantasyguru.com. And I will be updating my rankings. I will be updating my auction draft book between now and the start of the season. I don't think there are going to be many changes from this point on. But if there are any changes or if there's anything that, obviously situations that change, I will definitely be updating. But if you see the date hasn't changed, it's not because not paying attention. It's simply because nothing has changed in the process. Nothing has changed in our ranking. So keep that in mind there. All right, let's jump to some risers and fallers here in my rankings over the last couple of days. And Rashi Rice, like someone that I was interested in, I think is going to be very productive when he plays this season. The issue is he's now suspended for 60. Look at me. 6 games. He's suspended for 6 games this year. So I moved him down to wide receiver 50 on my board. Like I'm viewing him as a luxury pick, right? Like someone that if I can afford to take him, I will. And I do expect once he, once he's on the field and once he's playing, I do expect he's going to be productive. I mean, we saw, last season, well, where before the injury, or how he started there. Um, and for me, I mean, I think he's going to pick up right where he left off. And I just, for me, it's just too many games, right? So it's difficult to put him higher than that on my board. So I have him wide receiver 50. Um, Again, luxury pick here if you're able to do so, but not someone that I'm actively targeting, not someone that, I'm going out of my way to get. None of that here with Rice. Is just someone that if you want a depth piece that's going to be out for 6 weeks, sure. If you have deep bench spots there, sure. But if you don't, if you have shallow benches, you might want to reconsider taking on someone like Rice here. I do think this boost up, obviously worthy. Brown when he gets healthy. Jalen Rose is dinged up as well, but he's someone that this helps quite a bit, I think. So maybe short term here for some of these guys, but Worthy, I still think is that long term, player for me. So outside of that, though, like again, luxury pick here with Rice. Joe Mixon, I'm completely out on Mixon at this point. Like he's someone that back in June, yeah, sure, we liked. And then, we once the issue started, and there was a lot of uncertainty, and there was a lot of uncertainty, and then we continue to hear reports that were not positive, and now he's going to miss 4 weeks, and there's been reports surfacing saying that this could be a long-term issue. Like, and we just don't know. So for me, I am completely out. This has made Nick Chubb move up my board here. And Chubb is someone that, again, I'm not he having high expectations for Chubb, but someone that if you are looking for production simply out of volume, someone that's going to be the primary back there in Houston. I do think they'll get Damian Pierce involved. I like Woody Marks as a late round target, someone I've been recommending in, late rounds. Good hands there that can catch passes to the backfield. And I think he'll be a good change of pace back for Chubb. So I, I'm out on Mixon. I moved him outside my top. I believe he's 71, if I'm being precise. Don't have the number, but I think he's outside of my top 60 at this point at the running back position. Just very concerned there with that injury. Again, mentioned Nick Chubb moving up the rankings there with this news. But the running back there that I'm targeting in Houston is I'm just taking late round flyers on Woody Marks. It's kind of what I'm doing there. Then moving up, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, like obviously Washington, Brian Robinson is no longer in Washington. They have Austin Eckler there. They have Chris Rodriguez. I'm just, I think Krosky Merritt's gonna get the opportunities. He looked pretty good, and I think when you look at the end of the season, he's gonna be the lead back when it comes to opportunities out of Washington. So I'm in on Krosky Merritt. I'm not gonna like go and overpay or anything like that. His ADP has, come up significantly than for in the last couple of weeks. But again, still someone that I'm in on here and wouldn't mind drafting. I moved him up, and he's inside my top 36 and at that running back position now. Some of the RB3, with upside, flex with upside, like that's kind of how I'm viewing him. Marshawn Lloyd, someone that we were targeting, earlier on. He's missing at least the last 4 games. Look, I'll be honest with you. I am no longer going to be investing in Lloyd outside of leagues where you have IR spots, right? And you kind of want to, take a late round flyer on him and kind of see how this plays out. Missed time with injuries last year, obviously, already dealing with injuries. You want to handcuff Jacobs, but this is not he's not the clear cut handcuff obviously anymore due to the injuries. So I'm out on Lloyd at this point. I already have plenty of exposure in best ball. I do have some some shares of him in redrafts, especially in those leagues with IR spots. But I probably won't be drafting any more Lloyd moving forward. I think Emmanuel Wilson becomes interesting there for the Green Bay Packers. Jalen Wright is another one I'm concerned about. So we know he's out for week 1, and then there's no concrete date on his return. And that to me is concerning. The quote we've seen out there, September, sometime in September, September-ish. I'll be quite honestly, like that scares the shit out of me when there's no certainty. Um, I like his long-term outlook still, but the short term is looking very uncertain, right? So I'm right now, I have obviously he was someone I was targeting late in drafts. Yeah, someone I have exposure to in best ball. So I will be in best ball, hedging with Ollie Gordon. I do think Ollie Gordon is the next man up to HN, who's was dealing with a calf injury, keep in mind. Gordon looked good at times in camp and in the preseason. He's someone that got a lot of hype there. So he's someone I will be hedging in best ball because I do have a lot of Jalen Wright. But again, I think the long-term outlook for Jalen Wright is still bright. So be drafting him in leagues where you have IR spots because he is going to miss week one, and there's a possibility that he missed multiple games, not just one game. So keep that in mind with someone like Wright. If you're looking to handcuff, it's very simple what you're trying to accomplish. Are you looking long term? Or are you looking short term? If you're looking short term, it's Gordon. If you're looking long term, it's Wright. But if HM misses time right now, it's going to be Gordon that's getting those opportunities there. Then Justin Jefferson is dealing with a hamstring injury, and I've gotten a lot of questions about him. And I want to kind of highlight where I'm at with him, right? I am still drafting Justin Jefferson with the number two pick in drafts, and I'm okay with that. If you are not okay with it, if you are concerned about the injury, if you are concerned, because these are soft tissue injuries, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, but these are soft tissue injuries that can linger, that can re-aggravate themselves, and that can become a problem, throughout the season. So there is risk, right? And I generally don't like to take risk. For me, I don't view this as a high risk situation. I do view this as some risk. It's not like a red flag for me. Um, but yeah, I'm still drafting Justin Jefferson if you have any concerns, right? If you don't want to take that risk, pivoting to Lamb, CD Lamb, or Neighbors, or Amon-Ra St. Brown, like I'm okay with that. Like I'm totally fine with that if that's what you want to do here. So I will be, signing off on that if that's what you want to do. I've drafted Justin Jefferson a lot. I drafted him just one of my most recent best ball drafts. Like I'm still drafting him. So I have no issues with Justin Jefferson here. He's my number two player, my number two receiver still on my board. But again, if you want to pivot to CD Lamb, Malik Neighbors, Amon St. Brown, sure. Talking about soft tissue injuries or just injuries in general. Like be mindful of players you're investing in, right? Like calf injuries. Jawan Jennings dealing with a calf injury, someone that's concerning to me. Devon Achan, calf injury. Those are concerning to me. Hamstring injuries. Those are, they do raise some, concerns, right? So all of these injuries, am I gonna adjust my rankings significantly? No. Have I adjusted my rankings to some extent because of some of these injuries? Sure, not all, but some. Um, but it's a matter of risk tolerance, right? I cannot tell you how much risk you're willing to take. I cannot answer that for you. Um, I would look at this as a situation where look at the players in tiers, right? And I had this conversation with a buddy of mine last night where have a specific drop off at each position for each, tier. It's a tier drop off essentially. Have a tier for each position of where your drop off is. Everyone might have different tiers. Use that, and if there's a player or two players or three players in your tier, and one of them is injured, and there's a bucket of players still available there, go with one that's healthy if that's going to make you feel better. I might be willing to take the risk. I might be okay with taking the risk. You might not, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're doing things wrong. It doesn't mean that you're doing, that you're making a mistake. It simply means that you have less risk tolerance than I do. I'm a high risk tolerance person. Like just that's how I am. So I am willing to take more risks, and I will take calculated risk. And then when I do take those risks early on in my drafts, I make sure to take less risks later on, and vice versa. If I tend to maybe not take as much risk early on, maybe I will take risk later on. Maybe I will take a Chris Godwin now that his ADP has gone down if I'm not taking on too much risk early on, and kind of see how that situation plays out. I love the idea of taking players like that in leagues where you have IR spots. They seem to be dropping and you can get them and you don't have to rely on them early on. Yeah, you're taking up a draft, pick on one of them, but that's okay. That's okay. You prepare your drafts accordingly. And that's what you do. Um, so that's some of the guys that have moved up and down. Like there's a lot of movement, there's been a lot of little movement here and there, but nothing overly significant. And Theo Johnson moved up up my board in tight end position. Someone I really like as a late round tight end. And he's a lot in my two tight end builds and three tight end builds over there on drafters.com in best ball. So moving on to handcuff priorities, and then when you miss out on your handcuffs on draft day, right? I want to talk a little bit about that. So the handcuffs I'm prioritizing, right? Trey Benson, Zach Charbonnet, Jordan Mason, who I also think is going to have standalone value, Braylon Allen, Tyler Algier, Ray Davis, Najee Harris. I like Roschon Johnson. He's dinged up. I've been asked a lot about the Chicago backfield. I still like investing in Roschon Johnson. You're getting him very cheap. And I like it. And then you got like other guys like Woody Marks I mentioned. He's not a clear cut and direct handcuff, right? But I do think that he'll benefit from Mixon's absence. I do think his role will be solidified there. Will Shipley's another one that I'm kind of interested in. I don't consider David Montgomery a handcuff, but for those who do, yeah, he's obviously a clear cut handcuff too. I consider him a running back with standalone value given the way that this backfield operates. Now, and Tyler Algier, I'm not sure if I said that name, but yes, Tyler Algier is another one I'm in on there as far as handcuffs are concerned. Now, if you miss on your handcuff on draft day, guess what? It's okay. Like you should have tried, but if you did it, don't rush now to try to trade for your handcuff because right now you're going to be paying. You're basically going to be paying. Probably, I would assume that most managers are going to start try to squeeze out max value, which maybe means even more than the draft, capital that was spent on the player. At worst case scenario, you're going to, give up the draft capital that was spent on the player. I would just wait, right? Because in some of these instances, some of these players are dropped within a couple of weeks, right? Because if the starter is healthy, they're not accumulating points and they're just kind of collecting dust on the bench. When that happens, go out and bid 2 to 3% of your budget. And if you want to be more aggressive, sure, bid a little bit more. Use a waiver wire priority. Who cares, right? You can wait around. Number two option is you wait a couple of weeks. If they're still hanging on to that player, see what the price is. That's another option you have. And number three is if you really want to trade, sure, but make sure it's a fair trade, right? Like don't go and overspend on a handcuff right now. Like if he meant that much to you, if this handcuff meant you would have reached a round or two before he was going, anyways. So don't panic. Like now it's like you waited around. You didn't execute the draft plan, and now you scrambling to what the hell am I doing? What should I do? No, no, no. Take a step back, relax, take a deep breath. Everything's gonna be okay, right? It's just a matter of you don't have the handcuff right now, you could get them. All right. So, and if you don't, that's okay. If you miss out on your handcuff, get another handcuff. Like, just get another player who can step into a significant role, like, or get a player who has standalone value. However, you want to draft, that's fine. But don't go and give up a starter for your handcuff just because you want your handcuff. Like, this does not make any sense. And it just at all. So let's truly not do that, guys. And that's super simple. I just want to kind of like because I know we've gotten a lot of handcuff questions and which ones are priority. And no, I'm not handcuffing wide receivers. No, I'm not handcuffing tight ends. No, I'm not handcuffing quarterbacks. And there are other handcuffs you could definitely target. I'm not saying that those are the only ones you target. I just don't think that every backfield is a clear-cut handcuff situation. And when I don't have a clear-cut handcuff situation, I don't force the handcuff, right? Um, Justice Hill is not going to replace Derrick Henry. Like we all know that, right? And I think when you look at some other backfields that you can go across the NFL and say, all right, that is not a 1v1 replacement. And some of the ones that I gave you right now are not direct 1v1 replacements, but these guys I do expect will assume over 50 to 60% of the workload, uh, you know, um, from their backfield if the starter were to miss any time and potentially even more. Like I think Zach Charbonnet is a 1v1 replacement. I think Jordan Mason, a 1v1 replacement. I believe Braylon Allen is a 1v1 replacement. Trey Benson, Tyler Argio. To me, all of these guys are 1v1 replacements. And I'm not saying that that means that they're going to automatically produce what the starting running back is producing, but I'm saying that this is going to be a player who's going to see the same amount of opportunities, if not very close to the number of opportunities that the starter was receiving. The production, that I cannot guarantee. And in fact, no one can guarantee that. It's just a matter of we're looking for the opportunities here. So those are the handcuff priorities for me. And whether I draft, to be honest with you, some of these starters, I am targeting these guys. And if you missed it, by the way, episode 111, it's talking about all of the guys I'm targeting, my favorite my favorite targets at ADP, late round flyers, my priority guys at each position. Make sure you're checking that out there. That's episode 111 of the Mind of Marsal podcast. That will help you on draft day there. All right, let's talk a little bit of roster management. And we kind of discussed that a little bit there with with the trading and stuff like that. That's part of the roster management there. But other things here that are important, right? Like people, and this happens all the time based on what I'm seeing in Discord. You want to leave your draft and outsmart everyone and not draft a defense, not draft a kicker, and drafted the extra running back, extra receiver. Cool. But guess what? If you do that, now you got to figure out who you want to part ways with, right? Like, why are we doing that? Because this is only going to lead to a tough decision where you're going to be cutting either a handcuff or a wide receiver stash, and you're going to be torn between these, guys that you want to kind of hang on to and see how things shape out. And guess what? You're going to have to cut one of them for a defensive kicker. Just draft a defensive kicker with your last picks, guys. Like whoever your last pick was in the draft, cut them then. Like that's what I would do because I would be utilizing that last draft pick on my defense or the last, if you have both defense and kicker, my last two draft picks in every draft would be defense and kicker. If you didn't do that, if you decide to hold off, don't make a decision today, August 29th, on who you're cutting. What happens if someone gets hurt in practice and is going to miss time? What happens if some unforeseen situation scenario happens where a player is going to miss time and you can now plug and play them, or you can plug them in your IR spot, or you can drop them because now they're going to be out if you don't have an IR spot. Wait now. Now at this point, wait until week one. Wait until you have to make that decision, whether it be Sunday morning of week one or Saturday night of the first week of the NFL season. That's when you want to make your decision. Don't make it today. Don't make it this weekend. Don't make it Monday morning. Don't make it Tuesday, not Wednesday, not Thursday, not Friday. No, make it on Saturday. Make it on Saturday. Make it on Sunday morning. All right, because by then you'll have all the information you need to know. So don't leave your drafts without a kicker or defense, guys. I get it. I trust me, I understand why. I understand the thought process. In fact, it's something I did early on when I first started playing, and it just leads to unnecessary dicey decisions. I guess it's the best way I can describe it. So just don't do it. You could always be active. Like if something happens, you can always drop a defense and add the player if you want. If you want to speculate, if there's something like that that pops up, but other than that, no, because who to drop? Trey Benson or Cedric Tillman? Dude, I think they're both holds. Like, what does the rest of your roster look like? Do you have an extra tight end? Like, guys, we have to we got to be smart when we're making these decisions on draft day because you don't want to cut these guys. What happens if James Conner, gets hurt in week one and you drop Trey Benson for a defense? Like, I mean, you just dropped a potential RB1, in fantasy to pick up a defense because on draft day you didn't want to pick up that defense. Stay away from these kind of decisions. I think it could lead to mistakes here. Um, More roster management, trading. Look, if you didn't, Nick, and I talked a little bit about this with the handcuffs, but this comes in general. Like if you end up with Justin Fields as your QB1, if you ended up with Caleb Williams as your QB1, if you ended up with with players like that as your QB, with Drake may have been asked, I'm not going to trade a significant. part of my team. I'm not going to trade my RB1. I'm not going to trade my wide receiver one or even my wide receiver two to upgrade at the quarterback position. I am lower on Caleb Williams than most, but in a lot of rankings, he's a top 12 quarterback. In some rankings, he's a top 10 quarterback. That means he's starting material for a lot of people, and that's fine. If I end up with him in a single quarterback league, I'm not going to go and trade assets to improve the quarterback situation. I don't think that the production from someone like in the Williams, tier is could, Trevor Lawrence, you got other guys that have been asked about as well. Like it just depends, like how much variance you want from the position. But I think for the most part, you're going to be okay, right? Like, so there's no need for that. Like, if you end up with like a Sam Darnold or a Geno Smith or Michael Penix, like if that's your QB1, now you're in a different situation. But if your QB1 is a top 15, top 17 QB, and you're in a 12 team league, like I think you could do worse, right? So I wouldn't panic right away, like to be trading for a quarterback, especially if you're having to give up assets, right? Because most people are going to want the running back and the wide receiver assets when it comes to that. So I am not in the business of doing that. In fact, I'm not in the business of making a ton of trades right now. Like outside of getting a good deal that's going to benefit my roster, I'm not looking to make trades. Like we just drafted our teams. We just drafted our teams. So why are we making trades already? Be patient. The week starts next week. The league starts next week. The season starts, and we're gonna have plenty of decisions to be made in a week from now. No need to overcomplicate your life right now. Just enjoy the roster. Enjoy the fact that you spent all summer working up to build that roster, build that lineup that is more than likely going to win you a championship, right? So, yeah, don't. It's there's. I feel like sometimes there's people wanting to trade for the sake of making trades, and I will say this: I don't do that. I don't do that. I like the fact that I took my time to draft my team. The players I chose were players I wanted. Outside of getting auto drafted at times, I'm good with my picks. So don't force trades. Don't force things just because you want activity. Um, you know, unless something happened that it just went completely, out of whack on draft day for you. Like, there's no real reason to be panicking and I didn't get this guy. I need to now trade. No, guys, no. I don't think that none of that is necessary. Being smart, making sure you're taking advantage of your IR spots. Like I think that's very important right now. I think you should be mindful. Like if you have a second tight end right now, if you have a second quarterback and a single quarterback and a non-tight end premium league, and don't use that roster spot on depth at the running back or wide receiver position. I think it's so much more important, especially now when there's a lot of uncertain situations, right? Like you look at Washington's situation, there's some certainty, in the backfield. You look at, the 49ers behind McCaffrey, you have Brian Robinson, but Garrett still in the mix. There's still like, some situations are very uncertain. Why not see what happens? And instead of using that, bench spot on that second tight end that you're pretty much never going to plug in outside of a bye weekend, and when that happens, you go ahead and pick them up off waivers. Guess what? You kind of use that on the running back that you don't know what the role is going to be in the next 2, 3 weeks, and you can kind of speculate without having to worry about it. And worry about whether you're or not you're going to have enough to bid, or whether you're going to have to spend a ton for that player in a couple of weeks. So that's another thing I would recommend there as far as roster management is concerned. Other than that, there's a lot of little things that you could be doing, like, keeping an eye on waivers, seeing news, seeing who's adding, who's being dropped. A lot of people start cutting players. Like for instance, Jalen Wright has been dropped in some leagues. If you have a league again with a IR spot, go pick them up. If you're in a league with deep benches and someone just decided they don't want to hold on to an injured player, but you have the space to do it, go ahead and do so. So just be mindful and kind of pay attention to what people are doing right now. A lot of people are impatient. We talked about everyone wants to trade. There's people that are impatient, adding, dropping, adding, dropping, adding, dropping. So again, these are little details you could be doing right now as we prepare for the start of the season. Now, I do want to talk about some things. I used to write an article, kind of my thoughts as we head into the season, some last minute advice, some last minute bullet points, and instead of doing an article this year, I decided that we'll do it here on the podcast. So I'm going to include that here today and talk about some of these things because I do think it's important. And I do think people need to take a step back, right? Like yes, we're competing. Some of us are competing for high dollars. Some of us are competing for free. Some of us are just competing to talk shit to our friends, our family members, our coworkers, whatever the fuck it is that you're doing. It doesn't really matter, right? Remember, it's for fun. Like this is fun. So keep that in mind, and don't let fantasy football stress you out. So that is the message as we head into this season. First message I wanted to talk about there. But look, trust the process, right? Like I discussed a minute ago, like you've done your due diligence, you've done your work, you've done your research, you've been, reading all the articles, you've been listening to the podcast, you've been looking, watching the live streams, you've been doing your homework for months, not weeks, not days, for months. And even if you've been doing it for weeks, you've been cramming a lot of content pretty short because there is a shitload of content on the site. So you've been cramming all of that up. So I can assure you that you're going to be more prepared than most of your league members in most of your fantasy leagues outside of your industry leagues or if you're obviously playing against a bunch of your subscribers, everyone that's in kind of taking in the same content, things like that. But for the most part, because I've had friends like they use other rankings, and I've compared rankings and it's just like, what? Okay, yeah, we definitely have an edge, right? Like there's an edge, right? And with the content and all this stuff. So trust your process, right? If things don't work out in week one, if things aren't working out in week two, if the player you drafted high lays an egg in week one, doesn't have the best week two, don't start fucking panicking. There's no need to panic. Like zero. It's only 1 to 2 weeks into the season. It's okay. Sometimes players don't have great week ones. Sometimes they have a great week one and then they fucking disappear. We see that all the time. Like, oh, everyone goes out and gets that week one darling, spends all their fucking waiver, and then nothing else happens the rest of the season, right? So, like, don't let 1 week of football, once the season starts, dictate where you stand with your roster, right? Like, don't start getting mad. Don't start saying, oh, this was the wrong decision. Like, relax. It's only 1 week, especially with rookies. And I talk about this every year, right? Like you want to make sure that if you're drafting some of these rookie running backs, I like a lot of them. We've talked about them. Obviously, like Henderson, Johnson, Ashton Genty, Hampton. We can go on and on and on about the ones we like. Some are going to have immediate roles and immediate impact from the fantasy landscape. Others could take a couple of weeks to get rolling, right? So be mindful of that. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if Henderson doesn't come out and light up the score box in the first 2 games of the season, he's not a bust, ladies and gentlemen. He's just a rookie, his second week into the fucking season. So keep in mind, so it's going to take some time for some of these guys. Receivers, the same thing. Tight ends, the same thing. Like roles and they don't develop overnight, right? It takes time for these roles to carve out, and we need to see it and the chemistry with teammates. That also takes time to develop. So you have to be mindful. Like they're human beings, and we're looking at this from a fantasy standpoint, but be patient. These are human beings, and just understand the situation you've invested in. Like, be very, very mindful of that, of what the situation you invested in, and also be mindful. And we always talk about this, especially rookies, like the draft capital that was invested in these rookies, like that could play a role in how they're utilized. So again, if you have high expectations for someone, there are guys I have high expectations. Garrett Wilson is someone I'm very bullish on this year. I've been very vocal about it. If he has a bad week one, I'm not going to panic. If he has a bad week two, I'm not going to panic. Like it's okay. We roll with the punches early on in the season, but you know what? Over the course of the season, I do expect that he's going to be, amongst the top 10 at the position, right? Like that's how I have them ranked, and that's how I view it. Like, it might not be a great first couple of weeks, but they might, you know what, it might start with a bang. So, and that's okay. So don't overreact early on in the season, you know, uh, when you're looking at your players and the production and whatnot. And as well as like, don't overreact with your record either, right? Like, don't if some of your guys, they're not performing up to expectations, you might go 0-1. You might go 0-2. You might even go 0-3. That's okay too. That's okay too. At the end of the day, you just have to make the playoffs, right? That's all you got to do. You don't need the number one seed in your league. You don't need the number two seed in the league. All you got to do is make the playoffs because playoffs is 0-0, right? So don't overreact when players aren't playing to the expectations for you early on in the season. Don't overreact with your record early on in the season. Just like if you go 3-0, you didn't win the fucking championship. You're just 3-0. There's a lot of football to be played. Bye weeks start creeping up, injuries start piling up, the waiver wires are obviously we're going to discuss that. We're going to, talk about the importance of that very soon here. So just a lot changes, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to always say this. Don't look at everything, long term. Like this changes week to week. 0-3 doesn't mean you're going to be 0-3 forever. And you could be 1-3 after that. And next week your team gets on fire, then 2-3. And then again, 3-3. Now you're 500. And guess what? All that sweat, all that BS from the first 3 weeks out the door. You're 500. You're probably going to be in the middle of the pack as far as standing is concerned. A 500 record might even be top five, top four, depending on your league, top six. Like, okay. So you're just working along to the top. All right. Um, Start your guys, ladies and gentlemen, in week one. Like, start your guys. Let's not overcomplicate this. You know, I've been asked, are we, first of all, I'm not answering start sit questions right now. I will not be answering start sit questions until Wednesday of next week when we're right there as ready to go. Monday, Tuesday, we're not making lineup decisions ever, by the way. This is never. You're never making lineup decisions outside of Monday Night Football when you have a player playing on Monday Night Football. You're never making a decision for the following week until Thursday, realistically, if there's any Thursday games for you in your lineup. And if you don't have a player playing on Thursday, don't ask questions until Saturday or Saturday or Sunday because there's a lot of uncertainty leading up to the weekend with players that are in question, especially when there's players in question, especially if your question involves players that are in question. Because so much changes, right? And we get that Friday practice and injury report. That's the main one. That's the one that we need to look at. That's the one we need to focus on because that's going to give us all of the answers or most of the answers that we're looking for. So if we don't have that, we don't have the answer on Wednesday of someone that's playing Sunday afternoon. We don't have that information. So going back to and I digress there. Start your guys. Like don't overthink it, guys. Like start your players. If you're drafting Terry McLaurin, you're drafting Terry McLaurin with the intention of starting Terry McLaurin, even though he missed, he wasn't training, working out, all that stuff, given the contract issue. Um, if you're, drafting players to start them. Like don't overthink it because someone has a better matchup, right? Like, it, you know, if you're drafting players with the intention of starting them, like that's what you should be doing in week one. There's no need to be cute. It's week one, right? And everything might not work out like the way you want it to, but it's week one, right? There's no need to overthink. There's no need to, oh, I should start this guy because no, no, no. Listen, start the guys you drafted to start. Like that's what we're doing in week one, right? It's as simple as that. I want to talk about preseason rankings versus week one rankings because this is something that at times there's confusion with, right? And I don't think there should be, but I do want to clarify some of these things. So, when you're looking at preseason rankings, that's what you're looking for the entirety of the season, right? That's your outlook for the 2025 season. That's my outlook for the 2025 season. I could be very high on player A. And I'm just saying player A and player B because I don't have week one rankings up. Haven't even, started that process yet. I'm still finalizing the process of, getting ready for week one and I'll make sure all the content and stuff is on the site. But let's say player A is very high on my board, right? But he's behind player B in the week one rankings, all right? And I'm not saying this is going to happen a lot, but it might happen, right? There's absolutely no reason to be like, what the hell's going on? Why is this player ranked ahead of this one when he was not ranked ahead of that one in the preseason? Well, there could be a thing. It could be that these are players who are expected to have similar roles that has, one of them has a far better matchup in week one than the other. It can be a situation where we think that player B might have more opportunities early on in the season. So this could be a situation where it's a rookie that was ranked pretty high, in the preseason rankings, but maybe we understand that it's going to take a little bit of time that before he gets going. So in week one, we're kind of tempering expectations, right? So it doesn't change the outlook for the entire this season. This simply means it's just week one, we expect player B to outperform player A, although we expect player A to be the higher scoring of the two at the end of the fantasy football season, right? This could be better matchups. Like I said, some rules haven't, you know, developed yet or been established for some of these guys. Game environments, potential game scripts that we're expecting. So again, one situation might be more appealing versus the other situation early on in the season, week one to be precise in this instance, and that's why you see it. But the weekly rankings are a particular week. The preseason rankings, the season rankings, and not the preseason. When we have preseasons are for the regular season, that right there, that's for the entirety of the season. So they're two different things, and you're going to see our rankings stay up the entire year over there at Fantasy Guru. We never take them down. The 2025 season rankings, those are up in addition to our weekly rankings. Those will always be up there as well. So, make sure that when you're seeing that, you understand and you have that fully in mind. Like they're two different things, and two different, ways of ranking players here. Working the waivers, I talked about that a little while ago. Your job is not done on draft day, right? Like, I hope everyone understands that. I have drafted a lot of teams that I love, and I know that, hey, I'm still gonna have to work the waiver wires. Like the season starts in week one. Like this is just part of the process, right? Like this is part of the process of getting to that championship. Drafting is preparation is part one. Drafting is part two. In-season management is probably the most important of the bunch, right? Because I think everyone looks at their draft day for the most part and says, fuck, man, I nailed that shit. I absolutely fucking love my draft. No one in this league is going to beat me. This is the best fucking draft ever. I should send it to the fucking Guinness World Record of the best draft ever seen in fantasy football. A lot of people feel that way. But shit happens, and it's the NFL, and there's going to be curveballs, there's going to be obstacles, there's going to be just shit that we do not expect. And that's when the fantasy managers are going to stand apart from everyone else are the ones working the waiver wires, the ones making those moves, making sure you're not, waiting around. If someone's cut right now, see what's going on. Keep an eye on roster cuts, right? Keep an eye on movement in depth charts. Keep an eye on injuries, updated injuries, you know. Um, make sure you don't have backup tight ends, backup quarterbacks in a single quarterback league or a non-tight end premium league. Like, make sure we're not occupying bench spots with that. We do not need that. The more running backs, the more wide receivers we have, the better. Those tend to be harder to come by throughout the regular season. The more you have on your bench, on your roster right now, the easier life is going to be as the season progresses, right? You can also use some of these, some of this depth to create trade packages, right? To upgrade your roster. Trading is hard, but if you have depth, you can make a lot of appealing trades, right? Like you could basically um, sh send some of your depth to managers who are lacking depth, right? Like you can make really good proposal if you have depth on your roster. So work the waiver wires now. Don't wait until week one, right? Um, if a lot of in some leagues, that were drafted a couple months ago, someone like Ollie Gordon might still be out there, right? Maybe people are not paying attention. People are still holding on to players. So I work the waiver wire. I cannot emphasize how important this is, right? Um, I think it's you start now. You don't wait until the regular season. You don't wait until anything. You start now, and just make sure that your roster, your bench is being used wisely. Like you definitely don't want to occupy it with a second defense, a second kicker, a second quarterback, a second tight end. Like don't. It's very, very important to have that running back, that receiver depth. And I cannot stress it enough. Like simply cannot stress that enough. Um, because right now, there's someone on that bench in some leagues, and I mean, in the waivers in some leagues, and that could help your depth. That could help your bench. So make sure you're finding those and make sure you're taking advantage of those that are out there. Um, Lastly, and I kind of started out with this, but I do want to kind of close it out with this as well. Um, Make sure you're having fun, ladies and gentlemen. Like I know for some of us, we're playing for high stakes. I know some of us aren't invested in best ball heavily. Some of us play, leagues that are a couple $100, maybe a couple $1,000. Like yeah, there is. You definitely are want to be competitive. You want to go out there. You want to kick everyone's ass. I get all that, but have fun. All right, enjoy the season. Understand that it's only going to be a couple of weeks before you're sitting there saying, "Shit, this season has just flown by. I can't believe how fast the season has gone by." It's going to be we're going to be Thanksgiving games, and you're going to see snow games. It's truly only a matter of time. It's 18 weeks of football, but when you really truly think about it, that's not a really, really long time. So enjoy it, right? Enjoy the process, enjoy the drafts, enjoy, your teams, and enjoy the fantasy football season. Don't let a bad week here, a bad week there stress you out. Don't let slow performances stress you out. Don't let, an 0-2 or 0-3 start stress you out. It's a long season. I know I just said 18 weeks is not a long time, but it's still a long season, right? Like you will have time to gain ground. So just sit back and enjoy it, right? Because we've been waiting for this fucking moment for quite some time, and the football season is right around the corner. So yeah, that's really it for this episode. Remember, like I've told you guys, we have a shitload of content there over at fantasyguru.com. Make sure you're taking advantage of that. I'll be updating my auction draft book periodically between now and then, and the start of the season, as needed, right? As needed. Um, Make sure you're paying attention to the waivers. Make sure you're paying attention to all the activity in your leagues right now, the ads and drops. I think that's very important. Have fun this season, guys. Just enjoy. For those who are still drafting, enjoy your drafts. Yes, the rankings are updated there on the site. All of them, Jeff's, myself, the draft books are all the Russells, Tyler's, all the draft books are updated there. So make sure you're checking all of that out. We discussed a lot here today. We discussed some risers, some fallers in ADP, discussed some handcuffs to prioritize here, some roster management, some things that you should be doing, things you shouldn't be doing right now, thoughts as we head into the regular season, plus so much more. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you're checking out all of my work there at fantasyguru.com. Make sure you're following me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at the Mind of Marsal. Remember, if you're enjoying the content, join the episodes, please make sure you like, follow, rate, review, wherever it is you're consuming the podcast. Again, thank you all for tuning in today. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's journey through the Mind of Marsal. Until next time.